Welcome to the Young Crones Cafe, where you can get a magic brew full of all sorts of information, both witchy and practical.
Grab a cup of coffee and join us. I'm Elizabeth, a wordsmith.
And I'm Dave, a modern-day sage.
We are going to talk about various witchcraft and life topics from a slightly more mature perspective, at least most of the time.
Thanks for joining us.
Picture an oscillating sine wave as it moves from its lowest to highest point, continuing down again. At its lowest is the winter solstice, with the peak of dark energy and the beginnings of the return of light energy. As you travel up, the times of Candlemas begin, continuing across the first midpoint of the vernal or spring equinox. As you continue to rise, the times of Beltane begin, and you move upwards to the summer solstice, with the peak of light energy and the beginnings of the return of dark energy. Moving down the wave, the times of Lovemas begin, and one continues on downward to the second midpoint and the autumnal equinox. Still continuing down, the times of Samhain begin, and eventually you end up at a new lowest point on the sine wave and another winter solstice. So let's talk about where we are on the wave tonight and what we are doing in our practices. Good evening, Dave. How's it going?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, Elizabeth?
Well, recovering nicely from getting a new shoulder. I'm becoming more and more of a cyborg every year, according to my grandchildren.
Robo-witch. Robo-witch.
Yeah.
Sorry. Couldn't help it.
And I've been coughing since surgery, which is just wonderful. However, thank you to our listeners who were expecting our new format to start last week. Had a bit of a family crisis, which happens from time to time. So we flip-flopped, and we're starting tonight.
Well, and we're blessed to be able to report that your surgery was successful.
Yeah, so far.
Going well, and that the family issues that you ran into have found their proper course and solutions. So.
Yeah, well, one hopes, yes.
Yeah.
On a positive note, I've had my staples out, and I get the full-time physical therapy tomorrow, so I'm excited.
I did my first extra, so if there is anyone that's still listening, that means I didn't scare them all off.
Well, and you shared from our liturgy, as was nice, about the autumnal equinox, which is what we're kind of starting with tonight for our solar cycle.
Well, and it's a crazy week where we're sitting, because I'm just coming off a whole bunch of full moon stuff that we're going to talk about later. But in the same week, we have this equinox coming. So
yes,
I've got candles between that and your surgery. I've got candles going freaking everywhere.
Well, that's always fun. But the equinox is actually Sunday, the 22nd. In case people are wondering, it tends to jump around a little bit on us because of the calendar that we have. It isn't quite in line with.
It's a Muggle calendar. It works.
Yeah, they do the best they can with what they have to work with, with Gregorian, and at least we're not, whatever year it was in the 1600s when they switched over to that calendar and people lost like 2 weeks and they were very upset.
That far back on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know odd bits of history that come out periodically.
Well, and I also noticed that, just from the point of view of bus commuter and kind of a converted morning person, I've noticed that here in the next few days, it'll be the sunrise and the sunset are at the same time, which is sort of the ultimate marker for equinox for me.
Exactly.
It was sitting out back this afternoon before we recorded here. I noticed that I still look and see my beautiful green full apple trees in the backyard that Susie and I planted. Mm-hmm. But what I'm seeing is what I want to see, because when I relax and take a deep breath and look with my natural eye, yet the greens are darker. The leaves have started to withdraw a little bit. They're a little bit thinner. And the tree is telling me, yep, we're starting to pull back now.
Winter is coming. We're preparing, even if you're not. But All right. If you want to refer to our chart, sine wave chart that you beautifully created for us, we're heading right for that midpoint.
Yep.
The second one, not the upward one, but on the downward slope. And
well, we could actually call it the dark word.
Yeah, the dark word. So I like that. You and I keep finding new ways to describe
it. The light word.
Yeah. And after equinox, it seems like we get an increasing awareness of the dark energy. It hasn't gone to the bottom yet, but we're getting there.
Sure. For me, I sort of associate dark energy with internal or introspection or intellectual and spiritual growth or suffering or what have you, in that kind of realm. And so, yeah, this is the time when I can literally feel myself sort of becoming a little bit less physically focused on the doing as my natural, primate caveman behavior. It's time to start tapering down and be ready to sit by the fire and heal.
And think.
Sure.
And study. Sue and I always used to start making lists of stuff we wanted to kind of learn about. I mean, when you're stuck inside in December and January around here, usually when there's a lot of snow and you don't want to go out, it's the time to read those books that you had planned to read in June.
It makes perfect sense that the autumn equinox is a great time to start laying out the projects that you're going to have for that dark season.
Yes, exactly. And like you said, the introspection, for us, the light energy is about kind of an external focus. It's the doing. Sue always used to start planting her garden and planting the garden and so on. And now with the shift, it turns into more of an internal, like you said, spiritual focus.
Well, and harvest and gathering and preserving and that.
And preparing.
Preparing, certainly.
Yes. So every year we perform the same solstice and equinox rituals. Ever since we kind of came up with one that we really put together and liked, there's a familiarity to it.
Well, what I find fascinating is being Sue's artificial archivist, which means being the one who's gone through all of the boxes and stacks of the paper that she left us. Even when I find 3 and 4 different years or different eras and different phases of the two of your path, what I see is almost exactly the same ritual with maybe a half a dozen words changed. So the core was already, sort of written from scratch at its purest. And I don't think that really it's ever been modified from its form. Like I say, just maybe the verbiage updated.
Well, if anything, the opening stayed the same. The idea of the working stayed the same.
It's great that you say that, because the opening for me is 2/3 of the ritual. I mean, when I'm going to be fortunate enough here in a minute to be able to read it, but when I read those words aloud, because of the power of the voice, I feel at that point like I have accomplished the intention of this. Call it a psalm or a prayer or what have you. Absolutely.
I think so. And like I said, we adapted Housel over the years to fit kind of differences in the way we think about the blessing of food and drink. But pretty much everything else is the same.
I've seen that evolve a little bit.
Yeah, that has definitely evolved over the years. But that's part of Love Mass and Times of it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I would be honored if you would read the opening, and then we'll do a little quick wrap up of what the intent of the working is, and I'll talk to you guys about a stone. So you do your thing, sir, and I will listen.
What I'm reading is actually from the original of the Tradition of the Path, and it is the Autumnal Equinox Ritual. It's subtitled Balance, Moving into Dark. We have reached the autumnal equinox point. Dark and light, night and day are equal for this one moment in time. After today, the dark will continue to increase in quantity and strength, sliding downwards until it peaks at the winter solstice. There are only 2 days each year when the dark and the light are in perfect balance, where there seems to be time to pause, to breathe, and to be aware of the need for balance within ourselves and our practices as well. It is as if these days were created to remind us of this need. Balance.
Exactly.
To me, it's the ultimate expression of any of the equinoxes anyway, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, I'm in that spot where I'm already starting to make some of those subtle little transitions from outdoor projects to indoor projects. And I think there's just such a, even living in the modern Western world, there's such an agrarian sort of, we call it, well, we're not talking about it as the autumnal equinox. We call it harvest. I mean, that's the times that we're working with.
Well, I think too, walking the path over time, you develop a connection to those cycles, like our solar cycle and the lunar cycle and the shifts in energy. Your physicality seems to align better, which is, I think, one of the reasons I get thrown off when we end and start daylight savings time.
Sure. It does give a bit of a metaphysical hiccup to some folks, certainly.
Exactly. But after the opening, we would, we would say kind of a thing and light candles and so on, if you'd like to read that. Right under the opening, it says, each light one of the candles and state together.
We come together to acknowledge the point of balance of the dark and the light. We know our lives need balance, our practices, our awareness of the mundane and the magical that we choose to walk between, as spiritual people and witches. So mote it be.
And now the opening is officially done. And we move on to what we call the working segment, where we take time to kind of make a list of areas that are in and out of balance. And with an awareness that there are definitely different parts of us that can be in balance while others are wildly out of balance at this moment. And the list is not static, but it's just kind of an awareness practice.
Well, and just to interject there, that's one of the things that's helped me using the model of body, mind, spirit. Mm-hmm. Because I've learned to be able to recognize that there are times when, like right now, my body is about mid-range. My spirit is very, very, very high. Mm-hmm. My mind has been troubled and I've had difficulty sleeping lately. So for me to not necessarily judge or try to solve those things, to be able to recognize that my body is out of balance.
Because I'm not sleeping.
My mind is out of balance, and to an extent, my spirit is out of balance. It's just that right now it's because it's huge and throbbing from a great full moon.
Yeah, but when you think about it, when you look at it in those terms, A, it gives you permission to be okay with where you are. Yeah. And B, if we are getting wildly out of balance in an unhealthy way, the more we walk the path, the more likely we are to recognize it sooner.
Sure.
And take steps to do something about it.
Absolutely, yep.
We'll leave that one be. But at the spring equinox, we use a different stone. But as part at the end of the working, we pick up a piece of penolith and pass it through the incense and set it up and asking it to be, we're going to tell it, we're going to place it in our home to remind us of that need for balance.
Sure.
Over the dark times of the year. And if I can pull it up correctly, because we have notes to ourselves all over the place as we work through our new format, penolith, there we go.
Okay, you're quicker than I am.
Well, not exactly, but I got this ready to do. So Pinolith is also known as Pinolith jasper and the fancy word marblestein. It's made up of dolomite, graphite, and magnetite, and it combines in white, black, and gray swirls. So it's
very similar to hematite then as well. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect representation of we've got light, we've got dark, and we've got all shades in between.
Sure.
Which is kind of what called me to it in the first place. But it's thought to have formed about 500 million years ago and was first found discovered in the mountains of Austria in 1873. So on the grand geological scale, it's a fairly new discovery.
Sure.
It's located nowhere else in the world at that time. It was mined extensively during World War II by the Third Reich for the production of steel, because they couldn't get a lot of the other products that they would need. However, in 2018, another deposit has turned up in Canada. So now it's in two places. Now, there are no myths and legends associated with this stone. However, it gets its name from the idea that the magnetite inclusions resemble pine cones in their shapes. And many people
have actually seen a piece of polished pinolith that did show the pine cone pattern to it, certainly.
Exactly. I think you have Sue's there somewhere. I would not be at all surprised.
I believe I do, yeah.
Yeah, but many people have actually reported experiencing a cooling sensation when holding it in their hands.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes. Now, magically, quick disclaimer, you can find all sorts of correspondences for all kinds of stones everywhere. These are the ones that the stone has kind of beaten me over the head with or conveyed to me in some way, shape, or form that my pinolith wants to be used magically for new perceptions, focus on one's personal spiritual path, mental clarity, and it promotes imagination and new possibilities. So it's kind of perfect for that introspective time of the year that we're heading towards, and the balance of focusing on the internal.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we have that, and every year we dig it out and kind of bless it again and say, we're working with you. I'm putting you in my home where I can see you all the time,
Right.
Some spot where I am a lot, just as that reminder that, balance is a good idea.
Every time my eye catches it, the spell becomes stronger, certainly.
Exactly. So there you go.
So, and we're also kind of right smack, if I'm not mistaken, we're right smack in the middle of what we consider the times of Losmas, right?
Yes, we are.
At least that's what I've been working on anyway, on my end.
Oh, me too. And we call this, all right, for each of our times of during the year, we seem to have a better ability to connect and work with one particular element. So Losmas is our element of air time of year, and it's naturally associated with knowledge and new perspectives. And
I remember it with the symbolic representation of shaking the wheat.
You're getting, it separates what you need from what you don't need anymore. Right. And we call this time of year our harvest of spiritual beliefs, because each of our seasonal times is about 90 days long. And we came up with different things that we would write about or focus on or think about based on the different times of year. So this is the time of year where, as it says, harvest of spiritual beliefs, we tend to go through and kind of analyze what our core beliefs are individually.
Mm-hmm.
And then come together and say, okay, this is still working just fine. I've grown and changed here. What new ritually to satisfy that change?
I notice it focuses, on the element of air, which to me, kind of from my perspective, is knowledge and awareness and things like that. So it's, here again, it reinforces that it's the time of year to sort of reassess what it is that I believe, why it is that I believe it, and these kind of things.
And does the belief that I started out with last year still hold true?
Does it still serve me? Certainly.
Exactly, because this is like you talked about getting the wheat from the chaff. We want to keep what's good about our beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with having consistent beliefs, but hopefully we're growing and at least expanding on them.
Right.
And sometimes what we knew before is always subject to revision, as we like to say, and things definitely change. I mean, one of the things we write about is our personal definition of witch and witchcraft. And we're witches who practice witchcraft. What is my definition of a witch and of the practice? And I might consider how you would answer that both for myself and if someone asked you the question.
Certainly.
It's a good way to look at it. If you have to explain in 5 sentences or less, you're a witch. What does that mean? You know, it's like a bullet point list for yourself.
I work with the elements and energies of nature. What I'm going to define as a witch. Yep. Okay.
See what I'm saying? So there's that. And because
back to positive outcome using intention and
and there's a lot of different ways to define that one.
Oh, sure. I mean, prayer counts.
Oh, please, yes. Okay. And all right, SBATs, for instance, here's a fun one. While I'm reading through the list, I get a kick out of the list every year because I've been fully working my way through them. We have come to recognize that an SBAT is not just a full moon ritual, which many other groups celebrate specifically, but any ritual that is related to part of the lunar cycle in general. What other parts of the cycle do you believe might be a focus for us on the path going forward? And what type of ritual can you envision using to celebrate? That particular working a couple of years ago, before Sue passed, led to us recognizing that the dark times of the moon, that 3-day period where we can't see it, are directly opposite on another kind of wave for a lunar cycle of the 3 nights of the full moon, and they're important. And
Sure.
Maybe we needed to start creating some rituals to celebrate that. So at some point we will share a Dark Nights of the Moon ritual because I'm sure we'll end up there. But that's the idea.
Right.
Have you got a couple that stand out to you on the list that you want to kind of noodle over?
Experience the element of air. I take this one super, super, super deep in that I've tried during this time. I've tried to go up to the beach on a windy day. Mm-hmm. I've tried to ride my bicycle across lots of bridges and smell and feel. And this afternoon, it was just a very, very light breeze, but there's a great big, huge old elm tree in the corner that we refer to as Grandfather. Mm-hmm. It's actually where Susie's flag is. And there was just enough of a hint of a breeze that I get almost like a breathing sensation. Mm-hmm. I listen when I can calm myself during the day well enough that I can hear Grandfather breathing. I cannot deny the presence and the power in my life of the element of air. It's one of the most profound to me. And, of course, I was a pilot for years, and I just, the breeze in my face is the ultimate expression to me of the power of air, the potency.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So it's wonderful when you think about it in those terms. And I'd be willing to bet, if you think about it, you get your deepest awareness during the times of love mass.
Absolutely. There's no question. It
seems to work out that way. Yep. And other people, I want to state this clearly so that anybody who's listening isn't confused. You have to look at where you live and practice, so that if you are celebrating the times of something and your weather or your environment has you put air in a different season of the year, Cool.
Sure, absolutely. Yep. Fine.
Your focus has to match where you are.
Well, and it's back to, at least for me, the what people call the majors, the solstices and equinoxes. Those two are moments, and they are to be celebrated as a moment.
Mm-hmm.
The times of, or the periods between the cross quarters, here again, I see those as a time, and for that quarter of the year, or that 3 moons, or however you want to say it, I'm going to try to work best with the element that I am most
aware of.
I want to say exposed to and connected with.
It's an awareness.
During the winter time, or regardless of where you are on the planet, during the wet season, you can't not be sort of focused on water.
Yeah, exactly. You see what I'm saying? And it seems to fit. But if your time of water is, you're in the southern hemisphere, which would make it June, your wet season, then
right,
that's when you're going to focus on water.
Sure.
So, it works out for people, I think. And that's the nice part about working with the 4 elements as the major focus for the times of in general.
Sure.
You can adapt it depending on your experience of seasonality. So, anything else?
The other thing I was going to mention, just because here again, it's the leaf time of year and the air and the sorting. So for me, it's also kind of a time of remembering, in that there are models in my character that each year I make a conscious choice. Yes, I am going to continue to honor my grandfather, or I am going to continue to honor this particular influence on my life, or whatever. And so old gods and ancestors to me are a powerful thing around both of the equinoxes.
Which makes perfect sense.
Like the solar cycle's sine wave, the energy of the moon also moves in a cycle, from the dark times of the moon through its waxing to the nights of the full moon, and through its waning and back around again. The dark times of the moon and the nights of the full moon are each a 3-night period around the astronomical observation. The energies of the moon shift in ways that are similar to the solar cycle, but over a monthly time frame instead of a yearly.
Okay, so now we shift from the slower moving solar cycle to the quicker moving lunar cycle.
To the, oh my God, was that an incredible full moon? I almost think I have a moon hangover.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Wow, what a week, huh?
Well, yeah. Not only did we have a full moon, we had a partial eclipse as part of it. So you had all kinds of energies to work with.
Moon was at perigee, so it was a super moon. So extra close, extra strong, extra vibrant.
Extra. Read all about it.
You got it.
It was definitely out there.
And it was an absolutely beautiful night for moon watching, at least here where I lived.
Yes, we had clear skies.
Yeah, it was just me and the mosquitoes, and there was a great turnout.
Oh, I'm sorry about that part. You live closer to the river than I do.
Yep.
There you go.
I'll take where I live. I'm completely happy with it.
Oh,
yes, a happy full moon to you, my dear.
And happy full moon to you too. The moon was actually in Pisces. Now, on the path, we are not knowledgeable by any way, shape, or form about astrology. That is a science in its own way in itself. Just constructing a birth chart would probably send me over the edge with some of the complexities involved. But over the years, we have kind of acknowledged that the 12 signs each have certain characteristics that kind of work really well for different types of magic, if you want to kind of use it as a boost in a full moon ritual kind of way, or any kind of moon cycle way.
Well, they all have their own characteristic energies. That makes sense.
Exactly. And Sue and I kind of came up with our own list, but I highly recommend, if nothing else, especially if you live in areas like we do where it tends to get very cloudy for days on end at night, and you can't see the moon, get one of those phases of the moon apps
Yep.
for your phone. There's a lot of really great free ones out there, and I have one that not only gives me the phase of the moon, but kind of where it is astrologically. So Pisces, real quick.
I'm sorry I have to interrupt this to confess that somewhere, gosh, about a year and a half ago, buried in a task list somewhere, I wrote the code to have a moon phase indicator on a website, and I pulled it off the site to do some testing, and it never went back on. So I'm going to wipe the egg off my face and say within the next full moon, there will be a moon phase app available at both 2youngcrones.com and youngcronescafe.com.
I love it. So in the meantime, we'll focus on Pisces. So it is a good time for intuitive or mystical kind of stuff.
Which works perfect where we are in the context anyway. Yep.
Yeah, so in the moon context, because I tend to feel like eclipses are sort of mystical in that they just show up, kind of. I mean, there's enough stuff on the news and they mention it on the weather that it's coming, but there are so many different kinds all the time.
Sure. And if you don't live in a lifestyle that has that constant exposure to information, you might look up on any random night and go, oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. And there's that mystical piece of maybe I want to try a different kind of magic. And the intuitive piece, strengthening your personal intuition or doing magic intuitively because you need to do magic for something and just going out and doing it.
Right.
Without a lot of preparation and.
Well, so I don't always do a lot around the moons.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, I tend to do more of my best internal, or introspective self-care work during the dark or the new moons.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, I just wanted to share with this last full moon, being a super moon and all of that, I really had a chance to use it and leverage it, and I feel great about the things that I did with the energy.
Mm-hmm.
In that the night before, or the first of those 3 nights, I was able to burn a couple of pieces of paper and got rid of some candle ends and whatnot that had all been part of the spell work that I did for your healing. Mm-hmm. So I had an opportunity to close down a bunch of stuff on the night before the full.
Oh, cool.
I had a great observation on the night of the full.
Mm-hmm.
And on the day after, I did 4 or 5 very significant big steps as far as banking in the court's case and whatnot to move things forward with having Susie's home become my home and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So I was really able to feel like it wasn't just a fire. I was able to cook with it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
You know what I mean?
Be a picture of the sacred burn too.
Energy and really had a couple of almost manically productive days.
That makes sense with the energy. When you think about it, there was a lot of hidden energy in an eclipse pushing you.
Sure.
And
I'm also now
for the healing magic.
I'm looking forward now to the next dark nights of the new moon, just because it will be such a nice sort of a relax and just breathe and know that I have taken care of some things that I have had on burners for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So during that moment of cleaning out my pack, I can get rid of a little bit of that dead weight during the dark moon and feel transformed by it.
I like it. And you'll appreciate the fact that we call this moon the gathering moon.
Absolutely.
Where we gather stuff up that no longer serves and pass it along or burn it, as you put it. It's a good time to clear out, to make room for the new. I mean, if you're going into an introspective period like we were just talking about in the last segment,
mm-hmm.
you got to have room to put the new stuff.
Sure.
So it makes perfect sense. And like we said, we are entering that waning period. And this is a good time if you have things to release or get rid of that no longer serve you, as Sue and I used to put it. Because we never were real big on banishing, because that involves we always felt like it was imposing our will on somebody else's choices sometimes.
Yep.
But we could do magic to not be influenced by things that no longer serve us.
Well, my own sort of personal use of the 4 phases of the moon on the waxing from quarter to full, I'm building and I'm planting and I'm creating.
Oh yeah.
And then from the full down to the first quarter, I think of it as a watering time.
Yes.
I'm not ignoring those things that I planted, but I'm giving them a little water and some space and some time to actually
manifest,
get somewhere and manifest. So I kind of think it is that, like I say, watering and weeding, just chop wood, carry water, do what you need to do, and let the spell work come along.
Exactly, which makes perfect sense. And you don't have to, it's like the increasing, you're focusing. And on the waning, you don't have as much light, so you don't have to focus on it.
Sure. I can believe that my magic is doing the right thing for my universe.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also extremely cool when you put it like that. Just in general. We seem, and as we said in the introduction, it's a sine wave, just like the solar cycle. I mean, you can use the different times and the different equinoxes and solstices to work magic, but it's going to take a lot longer to manifest because of the length of the light or the length of the darker energies.
So another remind me to, we have a solar cycle wave chart. I haven't created the lunar cycle wave chart yet.
But it's coming.
Yeah.
You'll get to it.
For that?
It's the same kind of up and down, and it's a shorter time frame. I think that's why witches started focusing on the moon's cycle for magic.
I love the I almost want to say the direct and quick feedback that I get from my
lunar magic. Yeah.
But here again, when it's year on year kind of stuff, the growth that I really get is on the solar cycle.
Oh, I agree completely.
And the times of the seasons, sure.
I think so. And I think the solar cycle is you could use it for like long-term magic, like major changes in yourself or your practices or whatever. It's great. But if you need something 2 weeks from now, I want the energy of the moon involved.
Right.
There's a reason for it.
And if you need to go shorter than moons, just out of curiosity, where would you go?
Me, probably days, because they all have a different focus.
See, the next step for me would be tides.
That makes sense because
makes sense having that background and whatnot.
Yes, as a Navy guy, you're more in tune with the tides than I would be.
The next ebb and flow that I need to have some sort of elemental manifestation of, I would go up to the pier and watch the tide come up or down.
That actually makes sense. Or there are witches who use what is called the Book of Hours, where each of the hours of a 24 cycle is a different ebb and flow.
Sure.
Yeah. So there are lots of options out there.
Use what works for you, but just to kind of shout out what worked for me is I've learned to always know what phase the moon is in well enough now, or if a stranger walks up to you and says, hey, what phase is the moon in right now? 90% of the time I've got that.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
That I become more in touch with its impact on my own energy. Mm-hmm. And then the next step for me has been able to work on the geophysical model in my head to where right now I can point to where the moon is, even though it's below the horizon right now. Mm-hmm. I'm understand intimately enough the path that it travels through my home that I know right now the moon is in the corner of the basement. I just, and having that awareness has really brought me so much more in touch with it.
I think so. And that is a great way to look at it, too, is we develop those awarenesses. Seasonally, we develop a greater connection with each of the elements. And in the lunar cycle, like you said, we become more aware. It's like, I know we just hit the start of the waning cycle yesterday because it was the third night of the full moon.
Right.
And I know now we are in the waning gibbous and where it's going. And just because I looked it up before we started today for shits and giggles, we're now in Aries. So that you have that backdrop as well. And it's just interesting how it flows.
Sure.
And I love the way you talk about your sacred burn, because you really had a heck of a bonfire going there.
Oh, that's right. I did send you pictures.
You did send me pictures, yes. And it reminded me of several times where I thought you were going to appear outside with the fire extinguisher where we had unexpected 6-foot flames when we burned some stuff.
Hey, I was new to keep a hose, Andy. I knew you girls.
I know, but it's nice to know we had the mundanical back up. How's that?
What I like is that the apple trees finally learned not to grow in that direction.
There's a certain logic to that, And I think we've intimidated enough of the neighbors over the years that people, if you feel the crazy people going into your backyard, they just go inside.
Right.
Okay? Gets very quiet sometimes during ritual in your neighborhood. We define a liturgy as some sort of a collection of available pieces of commonly used ideas, phrases, or practices. In other words, this might encompass chants, circle casts, quarter calls, as well as many different things that can be considered some type of prayer. The Path's definition of prayer is using words as a way to sanctify ourselves or something important to us. In other words, this is making the time to value self and our spiritual practices on a regular basis and with dedicated intent. Our prayers can potentially be spell work or words that are part of a ritual where we can reach out to the various energies that we work with. So we wrote a book called The Liturgy of the Path, a book of prayer for witches, as a way to share our liturgy with you. Here's a reading from this book that relates to what we are talking about tonight. The equinox is almost upon us, and after it occurs on Sunday, we find ourselves more aware of the increasing darkness around us as we approach that really deep, dark time of the year where we tend to do a lot of soul searching and writing about personal growth and so on. I always find it's a good idea to take a moment and pause whenever you can and do a blessing of self. So that is our liturgy reading for today. We can all use blessings in our lives, after all, and we do not have to depend on others to bestow them upon us. This blessing focuses on various parts of self that we bring together when walking the path. It could also be used prior to a ritual, focusing yourself in the now to start the process of moving from that mundane to the magical. I am aware of my physical self, all my senses, my eyes that see, my ears that hear, my nose that smells, my mouth that tastes, my body that is aware of my surroundings. I am aware of my mental self, my brain that thinks and discerns, my memories of my own walk along the path, my knowledge acquired through time and study, my psychic self that is aware of the magical that surrounds me. I am aware of my soul self, that quiet voice within, my morality and ethics, my inner spark of the divine that longs for connections, my source of witch blood that guides my path, my uniqueness that creates my core beliefs. I am aware of all of myself working in harmony, and I bless myself. Simple and to the point. So may you find mirth and reverence in all things.
We've spent time talking about the overreaching energies and what we are doing to work with them on a larger scale. Now, let's take some time to consider what we call the ritualization of the everyday. These are the daily practices that we are doing to not only develop and reinforce our connections with these energies, but the little things that serve as reminders that we are witches and magical seekers during our walk through the everyday mundane. We'll also share some rituals that mark some of the personal happenings in our lives that can be enhanced by creating some sort of small or big ritual to acknowledge them. So, what's today's ritualization about?
We've talked about all the quote-unquote big important stuff, but I tend to feel that these little things are the really important parts of being a witch. Because there's lots of witches who celebrate the solar cycle. There's lots of witches who work with the moon. But what are we doing as witches right now?
So lately for me, it's been healing spells for you, security spells for some stuff I'm doing around the house and paperwork, turning things from Susie's into my own, and getting past some obstacles there. And I'm trying to do some spell work on my musical instruments by ritualizing some of the maintenance that I'm doing with them.
Oh, I like that. And can I tell you, thank you for the healing magic. I will say, I went and had the surgery and was aware that I'm actually having more movement than they said I should have at this phase of the game. Don't tell the doctors because they'll want to restrict me more. But in terms of, all right, prime example, I went and got my stitches up this week because they are staples. It's not even stitches, it was staples.
Right.
Internal stitches, but the surface was staples, 14 staples. And I meet with the turkey little physician's assistant on Monday who looks about and is, expecting a child in a week and a half.
Oof,
It's
okay.
like her last day at work. And we had, a little conversation about, are you having a boy or girl? And it's their first one, so they're going to be surprised. And I wished her joy with that. I really did, because
I love that.
And in my head, I'm doing a little blessing for safe delivery and, all of that. That was part of it. And then she takes out the staples and pipes up with that statement. For a woman your age, you're healed up a lot faster than we would have expected. Now, I did not beat her over the head with the scissors or the forceps or anything that she was using to remove the staples.
You look her right in the eye, deadpan, and say, I'm a witch.
No, I just said thank you. I just said thank you. I was not as aware because you and I haven't been as in touch as we usually are. You and I get together on a regular basis.
Sure.
So, make sure we're on point for everything. And you're helping me edit a book of short stories, but more about that another time. But
what I've been doing as far as the healing magic has been mostly centered around, I found a bottle of essential oil that I'm pretty sure you and Susie created, dedicated to the Green Man.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought when I saw that was, you're having an implant put in, so there needs to be growing sinew and that sort of
yes.
I'm reintegrating and molding into. And so I thought of, leveraging some of that Green Man energy and having things knit and heal and fuse together well. And I've had a couple of my coworkers not only saying their prayers or lighting some candles or whatever for you, but we all, just because of the work we do, we all struggle as older folks with our shoulders. Towards the end of the day, they just get done.
Yes, They don't want to lift anymore. Yeah.
Your arms are awful heavy, and when we get to that point, first off, I like to say a little pagan prayer, what have you, that I'm glad that my shoulders can hurt because that means I'm still fit enough and able enough to be at a job where I'm using my shoulders enough where they hurt.
Which makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. And then our second thought, we were joking with each other, is yay, Elizabeth, because Elizabeth is for the first time in years going to be able to reach her hands over her head. And so we've been trying to sort of just talk up that healing energy and tying it into the full moon,
whatever it is that's working. I get to start full-time physical therapy tomorrow. In fact, I have been doing exercises at home that they gave me to start doing before I even had the surgery. Like, these are what you need to be doing 3 times a day. And I am religiously doing them and picturing kind of that healing energy for myself.
That's
magic. As I do these kind of exercises, I am creating the muscular connections I will need to successfully have my shoulder move the way it's supposed to. And part of that is I keep thinking I am going to be able to manage a drive-thru.
Yeah. You're going to be able to use an ATM.
Yes, without having to open the car door and turn sideways. Or I'll be able to run through my favorite coffee place and not have it be a juggling match to get the coffee in the car.
Yeah. Without your left arm, you're kind of at the mercy of the drive-through person there.
Yeah, exactly.
Do they throw it at you often?
Huh?
Do they throw it at you often?
But I've also been to this same drive-through that I can pull up and they'll just tell me my order's ready because you order in the app.
Yeah, okay, there you
They recognize the car, you know. Yes, it just tells me I spend way too much.
Here again, it's part of our daily rituals. So
there we go. Yeah. But for me, because I am limited, I have been enjoying the basics of at least sticking my head out the door at night and seeing if I can see any sign of moon activity.
Sure.
Or Venus tends to come up right in the middle of a couple of branches of a tree that I have out there, and I see that. And I have taken to pulling myself a Witchstone card once I am up and moving in the morning, you know. And one of the things I'm doing is I am looking for, they have these craft boxes at the big square box stores that you can get with all the different slots in them.
Yeah.
And I am going to go through. This is one of my internal projects that I'm kind of looking at working on now, and organize all my rocks.
Oh, good. When you're done with yours, you can do mine.
Yeah, because maybe we can make the match. Oh. You know, my bowl overfloweth again. A couple of years ago, I was in one of those dollar stores, and I found this cheap bowl, and it looks like this veins of marble in it.
Yep.
You know, the pattern, and it's plastic, so it doesn't matter if it cracks under the weight of rocks. Never has, but I keep expecting it to. So my rocks are kind of piled up and kind of overflowing, and I know what they all are.
I've seen your rock garden, dear.
Yes, and it's expanding all the time. Rocks just kind of follow me home.
So what other kind of everyday rituals are you doing recently?
Well, I'm making sure that I am lighting my tea light every morning and kind of doing, it's almost like a greet the day and prepping myself, setting my intent for the day.
Excellent.
That's something that come health, sickness, and disaster, I tend to do pretty consistently.
I've kind of fallen out of my morning routine, and so, of course, the universe is going to have that come up in conversation to help me get back to that. But yeah, my little short walk up the block here to the bus stop, I had kind of a regular everyday mantra that I was doing, and I've gotten away from that lately. So here's a realization where I've let some of the ritual of my day lapse.
Well, it's not necessarily lapse because you're doing different things.
Sure.
You know, this is part of it. When I it's not a slump because I want to practice. It's the physical limitations at this point that are keeping me from dancing around perambulating around the bonfire in a manner that in my head I am dancing. And in reality, I'm making sure I don't trip over the grass,
Perambulating. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So you get the point.
Moving along nicely, thanks.
Yeah. But because I have had physical limitations, there are certain things that I will go through periods of times where I can't do some of these things. And I find that a way for me to get back into it and remind myself that regardless of the fact that I can't physically hold a tea light in my left hand while I light it with my right, I can still stick my finger out and hold steady on the counter while I light it, kind of thing. So I am finding ways to have the old standbys feel comfortable again.
Sure.
And that allows me then to remind myself, yes, I am a witch. Yes, I am a seeker. I walk the past tradition that, damn it, I helped create. So it gives my soul what it needs.
I am a spiritual being having a human experience.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And there are days when I can focus better on the spiritual, when I can do those little touchstone things.
Sure.
Like I have a rock sitting in front of me when I write.
So yeah. I've got a neat, I had mentioned earlier, I've got a neat musical project going on.
Yes.
So I have my drum set all apart right now.
Yes, I can see the cymbals.
Just cymbals all over the floor. Yep. So the difference between $100 cymbal, or when you have 11 of them, and $1,000 cymbal, there is a distinct difference in sound.
I would agree with that.
Knowing that it is not appropriate in my life for me to, even if I had the money, it's in my basement. I don't need $1,000 cymbals for what I do with my $300 drum kit.
I agree.
So what I've done is I've taken every single cymbal off, and I've got the old-fashioned, this is how you polish the cymbals. I'm going through one cymbal at a time, and it's very labor-intensive. It's rubbing. It's meditative. I can have music going on or whatever while I'm doing it. But what I'm doing is I'm rubbing these cymbals cleaner than they were when they were brand new, which was probably 10 years ago, and some of them are pretty cruddy. But with the intention, while I'm rubbing them, that when I finish rubbing this $100 cymbal, it will sound to me, when I play it, like $1,000 cymbal.
Which makes perfect sense.
And I'm doing that with each member of the kit as I go through, because I know I am convincing myself subliminally while doing the magic that whether or not they are the ultimate end-all be-all cymbals or not, they are simply going to sound so much better.
And
having done that magic to them.
Well, I think too, because it is a musical instrument, you can develop that connection and the cymbals in their own way because they are metal.
Absolutely.
Which is
they are elemental bronze.
Yep. They're elemental bronze. So they may want to work with you in that way. You're developing that connection. And I think that's way cool.
And I'll have to let you listen to the difference, but I believe that even if the only ears in the universe that they sound different to are mine, it's worth the blister on my thumb.
Well, that, and like you said, some of them got them pretty cruddy over the years. Maybe they need a good cleaning.
Sure. And here again, it's also back to our ritualization. It makes me sit still for 15 or 20 minutes a day to rub these cymbals. And that, I think, might be as much of the importance of the magic as anything else, is that meditative aspect of just Dave, set everything aside, put some music on, and just sit there and rub a cymbal for a while. And it's been cathartic and healing.
Yeah, I can believe that, because people forget that meditation is more than just closing your eyes and breathing. There are all sorts of moving meditations.
Wax on, wax off. Absolutely. You know, if I can find a meditative state while pedaling a bicycle just wonderfully, especially because I get spoiled. I live on the river, so I have a river and the sky and trees. Yeah.
What more do you need at that point?
I pretty much am flying just like Peter Pan, and I get the happy thoughts.
Oh, there you go. For me, it's washing dishes.
Yeah.
By hand.
Okay.
There's something about the feel of the rubbing of the dish with the rag or the sponge, and the feel of the bubbles and the noise of the water and the rinsing and the seeing the clean.
Sure.
You know.
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of different. There's scent feedback there. There's tactile feedback. There's the sound of the rushing water, like you say, with the bubbles. So,
yeah, there's a textural component involved with the feel of dishes.
I'm hoping that you don't clean your dishes with a rock, but other than that, I know how you are about rocks.
No, they have their place, and some of them actually don't like water.
This is true. Absolutely.
You know, so there is that aspect of it. And with that joke in place, take a moment and figure out what you're doing that are those little daily, let's see what I used to call them, touchstones that remind you that you're a witch, or those little moments of quick spell magic that you may be using for whatever purpose, and enjoy the fact that we have those options. There's all those normal people out there who have no clue.
Or, you know, sometimes you'll surprise yourself by just sort of watching yourself and find how many of these little things that you hadn't really considered as rituals that you're doing on a regular basis. I mean, we all have our putting our coat and hat on and grabbing our car keys habit. Mm-hmm. That is a form of ritual, because you are going through
for a journey
and preparing to shut the house down, and you are intentionally leaving your home to be safe and yada yada. So those moments, if you see them for the rituals that they are, that enriches your life and again reminds you that you are a spiritual being.
And that's exactly what we mean by the ritualization of the everyday. So with that being said, my friend, as part of our ritual on the podcast, may you find mirth and reverence in all things.
It's so great to have you back, my friend. Be safe, be kind, and be loved.
Witchstone cards are a divination system created by the two young crones, consisting of 32 cards depicting various witchcraft archetypes and concepts. They are divided into two sets, 16 concrete and 16 concept cards. The concrete cards relate to physical energies, including the 4 directions, phases of the moon, sabbats, and cross-quarter times. The concept cards deal with physical activities and the energy of actions, results, and mental concepts or witchcraft practices and the energy of thoughts, processes for spiritual growth and change. They are read as seen energy with the picture visible, or unseen energy, which is the card back, which can give each one a different focus. So with that, to finish up the episode, Dave, our sage, is giving a small witchstone reading to give you a heads up about some potential energies that may show up over the next few days, or just to give you some food for thought. Hey, Dave, what's in the cards tonight?
Hi, folks. Tonight, I am going to do a 3-card that's just a little bit different than what some 3-card readings are used to. Most of the time when we talk about a 3-card reading, there's a tradition where we look at what has happened in the recent past or the events that have led us to a certain point. The middle card being the present now or the present moment in the circumstances that we're in. And then potential future outcomes, or, you know, what kind of energies to watch out for along our path or whatnot. And I said it that way specifically with path in mind because I'm going to try something a little bit different tonight, and I'm going to do a 3 card. But for the first card, I'm going to let the cards give us a message or some feedback on where we are right now at this moment. Elizabeth and I have just had the pleasure of recording our first new format episode, so energies are real high. We're coming off a full moon with an eclipse. We got tons of stuff going on with solstice energy. So I kind of want to capture the now in my first card. And then in the second card, we'll look at some energies or things to look out for in our short-term future, and this meaning over the next few days ahead. And then the third card being a little bit deeper into the future, more in terms of weeks or months. Just because I think if I do it this way over a period of time and we're able to look back at the different readings that we've gotten, we should be able to see some progression that would demonstrate that there is, in fact, a path that we're following or walking. So I'm going to call it the 3-step. The where I'm standing, the where I'm facing, and the where I'm heading. And so, Elizabeth is over here taking notes like crazy because I'm making this up on the fly. But anyway, the deck that we are using is called the Witchstones Oracle deck. It's originally based on a set of stones that Elizabeth and my late wife Susie created for doing almost a form of runic divination, but it's evolved into so much more now that we on the path like to use these sometimes as just to pull a card every morning or whatnot, just to kind of give us either a gauge on where our energies are, or sometimes, especially in my case recently, I pulled cards that gave me a hint on something that I was going to need to be able to face or deal with that day that I might not have dealt with as well had I not had the card to give me a little bit of heads up. Hey, watch out, there's some of this going on. And so anyway, we're going to do our cut and shuffle. And our first card is face down, or what we call unseen energy in the reading. Our second card is the Lofmas card in the seen format, and then unseen again. So when I say unseen, what I'm describing is one of our cards turned face down, so you just see the back of the card. Or when it was originally the Witchstones themselves, you would see the back of the stone itself. And so that's where we kind of got the idea of the unseen aspect. And generally that describes either something hidden or something introspective or a little bit more on the ethereal side and a little less concrete. So our where are we right now at this moment also just happens to be the very, very first card in the deck. It's the North card. And its unseen energy characteristics are earth energy, ungrounded energy, and health issues. So far this evening, we have talked about Elizabeth's recovery from her surgery and how both of us are feeling more healthy than we have in quite some time. We've talked about different energies and whatnot, so I'd say the cards are in tune with the energy that we have at least right here, right now. It's the first card in the deck. It's the first step out on this path for us. And showing up as unseen tells us that a lot of the work that we are going to be able to do with this podcast and with this segment is the kind of work that is unseen. That's a spiritual kind of work. Our second card up is the Lofmas card, which, interestingly enough, we're actually there in the middle of Lofmas. So, in its seen energies are the time of harvest, gathering and using your blessings, and gratitude. So, this is something that over the next few days or few weeks, we might be reminded to focus on, or it might even be reflecting my own energy in that over the last several days, I have been feeling exceptionally grateful and been getting a lot of obstacles overcome. So this being my deck on my table, there's a reasonable possibility that this deck is a little skewed. Elizabeth, let's try doing this in a different location next time and see if it makes any difference. And our third card, or the weeks and farther out in the future, is the Hermit's Lantern in its unseen state. The Hermit's Lantern is always a fascinating. To me, the symbol is what I remember Susie creating for the word gnosis, or inner knowledge and knowledge of character, knowledge of person. You could also substitute wisdom or clarity. But in this unseen condition, need to expand their focus, possibly change in direction. This could, again, just be symbolizing the fact that we are doing a completely new format and doing something new with the podcast. It could also be saying that, now that some of these things that we've been more aware of recently are going to cause us to know our direction better. So I'm seeing, even though it was an unseen or a down card, a seen and an unseen, what I see is an overall positive in this. What I see is the fact that we are using the energy of the time of year as we need to start looking into our own internal knowledge, which is completely appropriate for what we talked about earlier with the equinox and taking an internal spiritual inventory, so to speak, and deciding what it is that we're going to continue to believe in the future and discarding what no longer feels right for us. So with that being said, thanks so much for letting me read the Witchstone Oracle deck for you. Until we speak again, be safe, be kind, and be loved.
Well, it looks like the coffee cups are empty for this week. We hope you join us again next Tuesday, but you can find us at our website, 2youngcrones.com. That's the number 2, Young Crones.
We'd love to have you join our growing online Discord community. Check out our new Patreon presence. Just look for Young Crones Cafe. Through Patreon, you'll be able to make it to our Discord. We are also Young Crones Cafe on Twitter and Facebook.
Until then, remember, we are witches who work with energies to effect change.
We are believers in both immanent and transcendent divine.
We are celebrants of the passage of the solar and lunar cycles.
We are hedge walkers who pass back and forth between the worlds of the magical and the mundane.
We are seekers of knowledge.
And we are walkers of a spiritual tradition we call the Path.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.